So I met Devin in the fall of 2016. I didn't know who Devin Nunes was. Most of the world didn't. I barely knew what the House Intelligence Committee was. I was trying to help a buddy of mine from the Special Forces community get a job in the Trump administration.
When he came in to talk to me and started walking me through like some of the problems at DOJ, just kind of big picture problems. And almost on the spot, I said, "You want a job?"
And so literally a week later, he was like, "Hey, I really need someone to run the Russiagate investigation." And I was like, "I don't want to go to Congress. I never want to work on Capitol Hill."
You were at DOJ?
I was still back at DOJ, and basically, I turned him down. I wasn't interested in doing it.
Under the slew of measures, 35 Russian diplomats in Washington, Maryland, and San Francisco have been given 72 hours to leave the United States. President Obama says the action against Russia is because of hacking and harassment of American diplomats in Moscow. He said the White House will report to Congress in the coming days about Russian attempts to interfere in the election, as well as previous election cycles.
I just want to see one thing. I want to see the presentation that was made to Barack Obama that he would pull the trigger on election interference that we did more than the Cold War, in the darkest days of the Cold War, to throw out 35 Russian diplomats. I'm not questioning that. Maybe they deserve to get thrown out. But I'd like to see the presentation of what evidence you brought to him that he make that decision. So they have this presentation, and the presentation's all the same bullshit you think of. They got DNI, and they have FBI, and they got the big crest on it, and they're going through it, and they're looking at it. And Pence is sitting there, not asking any question that's relevant, so they're going through the whole thing.
The fact is, Russia meddled in our 2016 elections. That is the unambiguous judgment of our intelligence community, and as the president said, we accept the intelligence community's conclusion.
Well, at the end of it, Comey turns to Trump and said, "Can I have a private conversation with you?" And he said he slipped him something in a sealed envelope that Comey wanted to show him. Well, the first question is, guys, you got a 2-foot presentation with your seals all over it. Why is that not in the FBI part of the presentation? Why has this not been curated by the FBI? Why won't they put their brand and their stamp when you're talking about Russian interference and you're one of the guys, you're the lead guy that threw the 35 guys out? Why is that not part of it? Why is it a side deal?
I'm about to meet with a person who doesn't know me. He's just been elected president of the United States. From my watching him during the campaign, could be volatile. And I'm about to talk to him about allegations that he was involved with prostitutes in Moscow and that the Russians taped it and have leverage over him.
This meeting was fictionalized in the 2020 TV miniseries, The Comey Rule.
One of those reports asserts that in 2013, you spent a night with Russian prostitutes in a Moscow hotel room, which was secretly videotaped.
There were no prostitutes. There were never prostitutes.
Our endeavor is to protect you. The dossier is out there and will become public. CNN has it.
CNN, of course, the Clinton News Network.
The dossier further states that you had the prostitutes urinate on a bed that had been slept in by President Obama and the First Lady.
This is what happens when you're rich and famous.
Everybody knew about the Steele dossier. They humped that thing for a year. No news organization would take it. Because I did this at Breitbart. I did it for a living. I said within 48 hours, some marginal news organization is going to publish that.
The 35-page document exploded onto the scene January 10th, 2017, when BuzzFeed published it. In all of its raw, unvetted infamy, that was just 10 days before Donald Trump's inauguration. BuzzFeed made its move right after CNN reported that the directors of national intelligence, the FBI, CIA, and NSA were all aware of the findings and figuring out exactly how to share them with the incoming president. In the end, Comey did the honors.
Well, the dossier claimed Russia could be using damaging information to blackmail Trump. The president has, of course, denounced the document as fake.
If you've ever read an intelligence report, this is almost like written by a child. He urinated on the bed, and he's a germaphobe. I mean, sometimes you got to know something about somebody before you lie about them. He's been a germaphobe from the day I met him. He washes his hands constantly. Same thing with a prostitute. There's no way he'd go with a prostitute. No way. For the reason I'm telling you, they consider it dirty. So they have these ridiculous things in there, that he's been an agent of the Russian government for 10 years.
Called the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic.
And so that's when I went back to Devin. I said, look, I'll do this. I don't know Trump. I hadn't met Trump, never spoken to him, never asked to speak to him, literally never been in a room with him. And I was all about, in my accountability mode, I was like, whatever we find, maybe he is a Russian asset. I don't know. Maybe it's total garbage. I don't know, but whatever we find, we put out. If you give me that deal, I'll come and do this investigation. And he agreed. He's like, we'll put it all out.
The dossier baselessly claimed a subsource E, the former FBI informant Sergei Milyan, who was not part of the Trump campaign, admitted that there was a well-developed conspiracy of cooperation between them and the Russian leadership. This was managed on the Trump side by the Republican candidate's campaign manager, Paul Manafort, who was using foreign policy advisor Carter Page and others as intermediaries.
Reports emerged that he was being investigated for his interactions with senior Russian officials. Those officials include Deputy Prime Minister Igor Sechin and Deputy Chief for Internal Policy Igor Davakian. Davakian is the man U.S. officials believed was in charge of, quote, intelligence collected by Russian agencies about the U.S. election.
Did you meet with anybody in the Kremlin and discuss the presidential race?
Not one word.
Was there any basis in reality in terms of the allegations of you meeting Igor Davakian, for example, and Igor Sechin?
Those are two people that I never met in my life. So it's just so preposterous, even before you get into the specific allegations that they're throwing around there. It's just completely made up, a total fraud. This is so ridiculous, it's just beyond words. I've never been an agent of the foreign power by any stretch of the imagination.
Except in a 2013 letter you wrote, it says, quote, over the past half year, I have had the privilege to serve as an informal advisor to the staff of the Kremlin.
You know, informal, having some conversations with people. I mean, this is really nothing and just an attempt to distract from the real crimes that are shown in this misleading document.
President Trump fired off a series of tweets blasting his own Department of Justice after it released more than 400 pages related to foreign surveillance warrants targeting Carter Page. It describes the former Trump campaign advisor as an agent of a foreign power and states, quote, the FBI believes that Page has been collaborating and conspiring with the Russian government.
I had to break through the walls of DOJ literally to go and get access to a FISA when I heard that through our sources that a Trump campaign official was being monitored. And I was like, what? I was like, are you kidding me? And I used to do FISAs, right? Like, that's, I think, why, you know, part of the background that helped was I literally went and wrote out FISAs and did the underlying documentation and the approvals process and knew how extensive it was to get one of those things authorized. So I was like, you're telling me there's something against a Trump campaign person? I was like, I gotta go read this thing. When we first read the FISA, half of it was blacked out. And then we had to go and fight for the redactions to be lifted just to read it. And then we figured it out. I was like, dude, this Steele dossier is in this thing.
So the Steele dossier was the basis of
the whole basis of FISA.
In October 2016, the FBI obtained a warrant from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, whom they claimed was an agent of a foreign power.
So when Trump said that Obama spied on his campaign, what was he referring to specifically?
It's the Obama administration getting FISA warrants. You know, FISA warrants basically authorize the FBI to spy on Americans. And they clearly were spying on Americans. Listen, if Stefan Halper has been sent to question you and wear a wire and report back to the FBI, that's spying.
When FBI informant Stefan Halper was sent to record his meeting with Carter Page, Page refuted allegations that would later appear in the Steele reports, such as Page's relationship with Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort, whom Page had never met. This information was known to the FBI at the time they pursued the FISA warrant against Page, along with Page's assertion to Halper that the core lie is that I met with these sanctioned Russian officials, several of which I never even met in my entire life.
So, we had what I thought was a legitimate conversation, but little did I know that he was really trying to advance other tactics to damage the Trump campaign. But in general, I was operating in good faith. I thought people who I thought were professional would be following the same standards of ethics and process.
There is this infamous professor, Cambridge professor, Stephen Halper, who carried a different spying operation toward George Papadopoulos, Michael Flynn, and also Carter Page. What did your investigation unfold about this character?
He was another quasi-source for the Bureau. He was working at the Department of Defense in the Office of Net Assessments, whatever that was, which we would later, when I became Chief of Staff, we basically went over there and shut that thing down because we figured out it was just a multi-million-dollar taxpayer-funded operation to put out propaganda. On paper, that office is supposed to hire individuals and put out research by engaging the private sector through folks like Halper.
If you go back and you look at his upbringing, his family relationships, the background.
Yes.
His father.
Father-in-law.
Okay? Well, I'm sorry, that's right, his father-in-law. And what he is willing to do on behalf of the government. Jobs that will require lying, cheating, stealing, and absolute deep, deep levels of corruption. And we pay him for it. I go to Cambridge to speak, because this is where Halper gets tied to me. They use Halper to promulgate a message, which was a lie, which was just to push a narrative out there. I get accused of this dinner with this Russian woman, then I go off and I sleep with her, right? What they did was they took that dinner and they took that woman who I had like a second conversation with, a split-second conversation with, and they said, let's use the old adage of the honeypot.
Of course, that's
right?
like another scripted.
That's right. So she's this young woman whose life was totally destroyed by this fat bastard called Halper.
But the point of the setup was to say that you slept with a Russian agent? Was that?
Part of the setup was another story to add to the Russian narrative.
Even before Donald Trump's election in November 2016, the Russian collusion story was already circulating in the media.
This is a race between a man who praises Vladimir Putin, pursues Putin.
And he thinks Putin's a good guy, so I just can't go there.
And Donald Trump has got all these weird connections with Russia.
Donald Trump says he admires Vladimir Putin. At the same time, he's called George W. Bush a liar. That is a twisted example of evil trumping good.
I do think that a Trump victory is a gift to Vladimir Putin. It's like they're on the same page.
And now you have Vladimir Putin basically pulling out the old KGB playbook on how to manipulate Donald Trump, and it appears he's fallen right into it.
Mr. Trump's continued flattery of Mr. Putin and the degree to which he appears to model many of his policies and approaches to politics on Mr. Putin is unprecedented in American politics.
Remember, before the Steele dossier ever hit the public, in October of 2016, David Corn drops an article talking about all of this in a very particularized fashion. I'm like, where'd you get this evidence? It took me 4 months to figure out that David Corn's article was in the FISA application as evidence against Carter Page to go up on this warrant. And then I was like, wait a second, you use the media?
Thanks for watching. You can go to tuckercarlson.com for our entire library of everything we've done, and we hope you will.